What the hatchery provides, first and foremost, are salmon. Salmon for this ecosystem and many others in the north side of the Fraser River. Specifically, we're a satellite facility that provide chum and coho salmon. We also enhance Kanaka Creek with our fish. We enhance with pinks, chum, and coho every year. Forgive me, pinks every second year. What that does obviously is help maintain the runs in Kanaka Creek itself. Over the years and over the generations, there has been quite a swing in the numbers of returns. What this does is allow a fairly consistent return into the system every year. And most importantly, with our coho, which several thousand that we clip the adipose fins every year, allows for a sport fishery on Kanaka. And that sport fishery is in November, and that allows the retention of one hatchery coho fish a day. And we find that gets utilized quite a bit. Aside from that, over 2 million chum and 2 million coho have been released in Kanaka Creek since 1983. The facility used to enhance with steelhead trout and cutthroat trout, but that ended about 12 years ago, 15 years ago. Currently, when we're conducting our operations, one of the most important parts of it is constantly having eyes and ears in the creek and in the system. And by having myself and countless volunteers taking part in different things around the hatchery as well as on the creek, and all the education programs that go on, just even more eyes and ears that first and foremost develop a connection for the creek, and which is vitally important, and help keep the creek clean and educate people. We are a satellite facility, so after our chum salmon have reared for several weeks, many of those fish won't just go into Kanaka Creek. A lot of them are going to go to other watersheds in the north side of the Fraser River. Specifically, we send fish to the Brunette River system, a tributary of that system, Stoney Creek in Burnaby as an example. We also send fish to Burn Creek and Spanish Bank Creek, actually, in Vancouver as well. As we know, many of those systems, the reason they're receiving fish is because of some incredibly hard work that's been done by many volunteers for dozens of years, and I can speak to that because I was one for many years myself, and I understand how much work's required to get these local urban streams back to the point where they can sustain salmon populations again. And there's nothing better than be able to provide those fish to those systems for that enhancement purposes. And I know Stoney Creek in particular has become quite a healthy run. I haven't been able to talk to too many volunteers about to see what the returns are like every year, but I know once finally some of those works are done down below them at the bottom end of the Stoney Creek, should see some really positive years ahead. So I'll just go over some of the operations of the hatchery and the seasons that we go through. Most importantly, the volunteer involvement that we have and need to get us through those seasons. First and foremost, generally late September, we'll start to see the arrival in a pink season of our pink salmon into the system. A week or two after that will be our chum, and several weeks after that will be our coho coming into the system. With that, October 1st is generally when we install what we call a fish fence in Kanaka Creek. That spans the whole width of the creek and allows us to guide fish in through a trap system where we go down every day to maintain that. We remove all the fish from the trap and enumerate the species as well. When necessary, we remove the fish that we require for broodstock back at the hatchery for our egg takes. That, as you can imagine, involves a tremendous amount of work. At the peak of the run, sometimes we're down at the fence twice a day, 3 times a day. For the most part, any activities, anything that I'm doing down at the fish fence requires someone with me, and i.e. a volunteer. Generally through the fall and into the winter, into December, we will amass as many as 400 to 500 volunteer hours. And a great deal of that is down at the fish fence, and the rest of that would be back here at the hatchery, because when we collect the broodstock down at the fence, we bring those fish back to the hatchery, hold them here until they're ready for egg takes, and that can be numbers anywhere from 200 to 400 fish a year. So as you can imagine, when you're spawning salmon in the numbers of 12, 24 fish in one day, it requires a lot of extra hands to help. Generally anywhere from 1 to 5 volunteers will take part in an egg take. Normally if we get beyond that, we have a lot of people just kind of standing around. But even then, that's fine too, because a lot of people just love to come out and just experience it and see what it's all about to begin with. And sometimes we get them hooked, and they come back, and we have them forever. After the completion of all our egg takes, and even during, obviously we'll have eggs in incubation inside the facility. While that's happening, we need to maintain our eggs on a weekly basis. Sometimes that requires picking dead eggs, it requires enumeration, other things that go on. Obviously water monitoring, maintenance of equipment, that sort of thing. For the most part, with the egg maintenance, we get volunteers usually into the egg room maybe from 6 to 10 hours a week, if that's possible at different times. And that can run right through till February. Usually around February we start to see hatching begin, and within a month or two, most of our emergence of our fish has completed. When that happens, all of our fish come out to our outside troughs, and those aluminum troughs will hold upwards of 30,000 fish, and at the peak of emergence we can be holding as many as 200, 300,000 fry. So as you can imagine, feeding and cleaning is what we do all day long at that time, and that can go on for a period of about 6 to 9 weeks. And it's a really important time and a really busy time. Again, much like in the fall, when we're down at the fish fence every day, pretty much every day we have volunteers coming out to help. And and again, being able to work with the fish so closely after all the other work has been done, and especially those volunteers that were out in the fall, working hard and sweating and taking part in the egg take activities, to be able to see those fish in the springtime is incredibly rewarding, as you can imagine. Well, what we do out here, as I spoke of earlier, we when the fish emerge in the springtime, after they're ready to come out of our incubation trays, they come out here or to some other troughs that we have inside. These are what we call a capilano trough. Each one of these will hold about 30,000 fish generally to start. So most of these troughs will be full of fish. At any one time we can have upwards of 200,000 to 300,000 young salmon fry swimming at once. After you spend a few weeks in here, the chum fry, as many of you may or may not know, after 3 to 6 weeks begin migration. And with that, we begin to transfer some of our fish out of the facility to different watersheds. Also, we have our Big Goodbye Chums event in the springtime, where the public can come out and release 10 to 12,000 chum into the creek. And once that end of the cycle is completed, we have a lot of our coho salmon coming out or emerging. Again, we'll rear those fish for up to about 2 months in the troughs. That's all dependent on weather and water conditions. Most of those coho, again, will either go into the upper watershed of Kanaka Creek or to other watersheds on the north side of the Fraser River. We do retain several coho every year, and we raise them to smolt, which is just pre-migratory stage, or the migratory stage. They get up to about 20 grams in size. Many of those fish, again, go to different watersheds, such as Burn Creek in Burnaby, the Brunette system. And as I mentioned earlier, also our chum fry go to Stoney Creek as well. After a week or two of rearing our coho salmon, generally when they're approaching the 2 to 3 gram range. Many of those fry upwards of 10 to 11,000. We generally keep and clip the adipose fin to mark them as hatchery fish. It's a little flap of skin between the dorsal fin and the tail. We remove that in order to mark them, as I say, as a hatchery fish, and that allows us to identify those fish when they return in the fall as hatchery fish. As well, it allows for a sport fishery on Kanaka Creek. So anybody that goes out to fish for coho, if they catch one that's missing the adipose fin, they can take one home each day through the month of November. Every second year, every odd year, in the odd years, next return will be in 2013, pink salmon come into Kanaka Creek. Over the last several cycles, we've enhanced Kanaka with pink salmon. Those fish have come actually from Chehalis, and we brought them here to incubate the eggs and release them into Kanaka Creek around 240th Street. It's just been in the last 2 cycles that we started to see a good return of pinks come into the system, and that's been really a positive thing to see. When we transfer our eggs here from Chehalis, we move them into a large aluminum tank. That square tank actually holds about 400,000 eggs, and those eggs will incubate in there through the winter months, much like our other eggs do inside the facility in the incubation trays. And when those fish emerge, much like the others, they will transfer into the troughs that we see here. When they're ready to go out to Kanaka Creek, which is usually within about 10 days, those fish get transferred then to 240th Street and Kanaka Creek and begin their out migration to the estuaries with the Pacific. Directly behind me is Kanaka Creek. On the other side of the Capilano Trough, just upstream of us, is our creek water intake. We have a weir system that we constructed, put into the creek to help retain some of the water and force it into an intake system. That intake system allows for all the fine sediment to settle down and get filtered out before it enters the hatchery. From the intake box, it goes through a line underground and to a 3-chambered sump. That sump is critical to removing even more fine sediment out of the water before it gets to our pumps. Those pumps in the main system is housed in our shack, our cedar shack that you see. From that sump, the water is pumped up to a reservoir just above the hatchery up on a hill, and thus is then fed back down into the hatchery for all incubation purposes. Remaining water is pumped through another line directly into the Capilano troughs behind me for rearing in here, and through another line out into our earthen ponds where our young fish reside. These earthen ponds hold upwards of 100,000 liters of water. So by the time all that water gets turned over, a great deal of any waste or even more sediment and stuff coming through in heavy rains allows that to settle into those ponds before the water finally ends up going back out into Kanaka Creek. As for the water that flows into the hatchery incubation system, a lot of that water will actually end up going down into what we call pond number 3. We don't rear fish in that pond anymore, but there's tons of natural habitat and wildlife that reside in the pond, from the herons and turtle and crayfish and you name it, and they get the pond cleaned up for us, and also it allows the sediment to settle in there before that water then enters Kanaka Creek. So these are our earthen ponds. What's fantastic about these ponds is, as you may see behind the fence, we're in the middle of the Kanaka Creek Regional Park, and it's open to the public. So everybody gets to come out and see the young coho fry as they rear. These guys actually aren't fry anymore. These are juvenile salmon. We will call them juveniles until they're ready, almost ready to migrate in the spring, when they'll be becoming par and pre-smolts and then smolts upon migration. So these little guys right now are probably about 3.5 grams. They need to be fed every day. We need to come out and monitor the fish for behavior and make sure everybody's healthy, as well as doing regular maintenance in the pond themselves, whether that's algae removal or cleaning our screens, checking for water quality, water temperature, oxygen levels, that sort of thing. My job at the hatchery, I'm fortunate enough to be the manager of Bell Iriving Hatchery, which I might say is a great job to have if you like salmon. But most importantly, what's great about it is you get to meet a ton of amazing people, volunteers, co-workers, and people in the community. With that, behind us is where we are, is Stoney Creek Regional Park. The facility itself has been in the park since 1983. Part of the partnership that was established between Metro Vancouver Parks, the local stewardship group KEEPS, which is the Kanaka Environmental Education and Partnership Society, as well as Department of Fisheries and Oceans with the Salmon Enhancement Program, as this is a SEP facility, or Salmon Enhancement Program facility. That partnership has culminated in, we're approaching 30 great years at the hatchery, allowing this facility to run and conduct all our education programs, which, by the way, go right through the park and Stoney Creek Regional Park, down at Cliff Falls as well as Riverfront. Many programs are put on by Metro Vancouver Parks themselves with their interpreters, but also a great many are put on by KEEPS and their education coordinator, Ross, as well as here at the hatchery with myself. With that, we do need a lot of volunteers, and if anyone from the Stoney Creek area or SFU up the hill would like to come down and help out, by all means, you're more than welcome. For the time being, which is at this time, we're in August of 2012. As I say, we're just preparing to tear our old barn down, as we like to call it, and rebuild. By spring of 2013, we hope to be operational again and requiring all that volunteer help that I've spoken of. We will have some volunteers taking part over the next 6 months over, in different things around the site. Specifically 2013 and beyond is when we'll get back to our regular events and programming. And hopefully by 2014, 2015, a fantastic new stewardship center will be built right beside the hatchery, and that'll allow us to facilitate many more programs inside the stewardship center, from workshops, from preschool to university and beyond. So please come down.